Have you ever hit a brick wall in your genealogy research and thought, what am I missing? Well, you're not alone. Even the most seasoned genealogy researchers make mistakes along the way. But the good news is, those mistakes can be fixed. In this video, I'm sharing with you 10 common genealogy mistakes that could be slowing you down. And more importantly, I'm showing you what not to do so you can make faster progress on growing that family tree. Hey there, I'm Lisa Lisson. I am a genealogy expert with 15 years of experience helping others find their ancestors. On this YouTube channel, I share my best strategies, tools, and tips for uncovering your family history, growing a healthy family tree, and not being overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you are in the right place. Today's video is sponsored by Archives.com. Whether you are a beginner or seasoned researcher, Archives.com offers everything needed to embark on your genealogy journey. They focus on providing a diverse range of census, vital, immigration, and military records, serving as more than just a database, but a partner in your discoveries. Users can seamlessly attach records using the Family Tree Builder and unearth new discoveries about their ancestors using the search engine. With users of all skill levels in mind, Archives.com ensures affordability for everyone and operates entirely independently of ancestry. They offer a more focused collection at a lower price point, with many users discovering unique records not found elsewhere. If you're ready to dig a little deeper into your ancestral research and are looking for more search tips, you'll want to check out their help page, as well as their expert advice on specific collections. You'll find all of that on their blog. So start your journey with Archives.com today to uncover those stories that connect to the past. I will have a link to Archives.com in the descriptions below. And thanks again for sponsoring today's video. Now, one of the first mistakes that you could be making when it comes to your genealogy research is not verifying your sources. It is tempting to take the information that you find at face value, especially when you stumble upon a seemingly perfect family tree or record for your ancestor. But here's the catch. Relying on a single source of information for your ancestor without checking to be sure that it is accurate can lead you down a rabbit hole of misinformation. For example, you might find an online family tree with your ancestor's name and information in it. But what if that family tree that somebody has researched contains errors or mistakes or incomplete research? It is crucial that you cross-check information that you find like that with primary sources. And what do I mean by that? Think birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, think wills, probate records. These records can provide concrete evidence of your ancestor and confirm or refute perhaps the details that you have found online. So next time you uncover a piece of information about your ancestor, ask yourself, where did it come from? Can I find additional sources to help back this up? Yes, it's an extra step, but by doing so, you will ensure that you have a healthy and accurate family tree. Now, the second mistake that you could be making is, well, kind of a big one. And that is ignoring the female ancestors. It is easy to focus on that male line because, well, they appeared in the records more consistently, right? Sometimes we put off researching that female ancestor because, well, they're a little more difficult. But I do have videos that I've done about looking for female ancestors, and I will make sure I put them in the description below. But in the meantime, what I want you to remember for this time is that if you are not researching the women in your family tree, you are missing out on a wealth of information. Take, for instance, the maiden name of, say, a great-great-grandmother in your family tree. These can be critical pieces of information in your genealogy puzzle. Maiden names could come down through family lines and appear as middle names for some of the children coming down through the generations. I've seen this frequently in my own personal research and that research that I do with clients as well. So if we are neglecting research of those women in the family tree because we think it might be too hard, well, we could be missing out on some actual connections that are going to be important to our overall family tree. So don't let your female ancestor research fall by the wayside. Look in those marriage records, those death certificates, and other documents that could reveal her maiden name. Because by doing so, you'll have that more complete family tree and a richer family history. Now, the third mistake you could be making is assuming that spelling was consistent throughout the years. Now, you might think that your ancestor's name was spelled the same throughout all his or her records, but that's often not the case, and I expect you have discovered that already. Names may have been spelled phonetically so that the record keepers wrote down what they thought they heard, and well, we know that record keepers did not always have the best handwriting either. For instance, even a simple name like Smith could be spelled differently in different records. It could be Smith, the traditional S-M-I-T-H in one record. It could be S-M-Y-T-H in another record, or perhaps a record keeper actually wrote SMITT for another record. These variations can make finding your ancestors in relevant records tricky. So if you are only using one specific spelling for your searches, you could be missing out on some important records. To tackle this, search for different possible spellings of your ancestor's name and consider how it might have been spelled over the years or how it could have possibly changed. That way, you will increase your chances of finding your ancestors in the records. Now, mistake number 4 is another really big mistake that you could be making, and that is jumping too far back in the family tree without sufficient proof. It is exciting to start researching your ancestors, but one of the things that I learned very early on in my research that was told to me over and over again is you never skip a generation. So as you're proceeding and documenting those generations back through time, do not be tempted to skip a generation just because they're hard to find. When you skip over a generation or make an assumption on that so-and-so is the right generation, and then you build your research on that, you could be building the rest of that family tree attaching to an ancestor who's really, well, not actually your ancestor. And then it is crushing when you have to chop that limb off the family tree. Have you ever done something like this? Have you ever skipped a generation when it came to your research and then you had to come back and redo your research again on that particular family line? Hit that like button and let me know. I will tell you in full disclosure, yes, I have done that as well. It is not fun to do. So you will avoid that mistake by taking a very systematic approach to your genealogy research, ensuring that you have verified documents, that you have strong, solid evidence for each generation as you proceed back in building that family tree. Now let's move on to mistake number 5, which is ignoring those non-traditional resources. Now, many researchers focus solely on more of a traditional research method: birth, marriage, death records, census records. These are very common to use. These are oftentimes the ones that we use to begin with, and they are crucial to our genealogy research. But sometimes they don't answer all the questions and we need a little bit more. Sometimes we have to think beyond just that more traditional record. So what are we thinking about? Think about records such as land records, which could perhaps indicate a socioeconomic status of your ancestor. You're going to look at probate records, again, helping you understand perhaps who is related, who is part of the community, and who could perhaps, as well as perhaps information on, once again, the socioeconomic status of that particular individual or that family. Newspaper articles certainly can tell a little bit more nuanced story about your ancestor. Perhaps you might learn about some of the social clubs that they belong to. You might learn about some of their movement patterns, that they may have migrated into an area and out of an area. City directories are another kind of non-traditional source that we might want to take a peek at. They are crucial to genealogy research as well and provide a ton of information. So think outside of the box a little bit. Think about some of these lesser used records that you might have been overlooking, particularly if you are early into your genealogy research. I will share a link in the description below to a previous video that I have done. It's a little more in depth on some of these non-traditional resources that you can use for your genealogy research. All right, so let's talk about mistake number 6, which is you are failing to cite your sources. Now don't panic. This is not high school. You are not writing a formal term paper where we think about having to cite all those sources and footnotes and all of that. What this simply means is making sure that you are documenting well where you found your information. If you are not writing down, if you are not documenting where you found the information about your ancestor and you think that you're going to remember it, trust me, you are not going to remember where you found that piece of information. I don't care how exciting that piece of information is, you're not going to remember. And this can lead to confusion down the road for yourself if for whatever reason you might need to go back to that resource to look something else up, if you need to use that resource again, or if a future genealogy researcher in the family is working on that family line and they have this wonderful piece of information, but they can't verify it because you didn't write down where you actually found it. So it's very important that we cite those sources in some form or fashion. When we talk about citing your sources, I do not want you to get hung up on writing the perfect footnote. Here's my rule of thumb that I use. I want to record the information in such a way that should I or another researcher need to find that information again, they can do it. Our 7th mistake is not utilizing DNA evidence correctly. Now, DNA has become a powerful tool in our genealogy research, but if you're not using it or analyzing it properly, you could be missing out on its full potential. It is not just about taking a test and getting a list of cousins. It's about understanding and applying the results into your research. For example, DNA matches can help confirm or challenge what you are finding in the paper records or traditional records. But interpreting these matches requires a little bit of knowledge. To make the most and best use of your DNA test results, you will need to combine your matches as well as your paper genealogy research. You want to use tools that are provided by the DNA testing companies to help analyze your matches, build out your family tree, and then collaborate with potential relatives. An integrative approach to your DNA research will give you a more comprehensive view of your family tree and a more accurate family tree. Okay, so that brings us up to mistake number 8, which is overlooking the importance of location. Where your ancestors lived can greatly impact the types of records that you have available for your research, as well as impacts the historical context around their lives. And if you ignore the significance of the geographical location of where they actually lived, you could be missing out on some valuable clues and context as you research. For example, it is critical as you research your family that you understand where they lived and how the boundary changes might have affected where you find your records. The boundaries for towns, counties, and even states evolved over time. Names changed, borders changed, and so your ancestor, who may have never actually moved anywhere, could have found themselves living in, well, 2 or 3 different counties over a lifetime, yet they still remained in the exact same place. So it is important to understand where they lived at a specific point in time, what the jurisdiction was, so that then you can actually find the records in the correct county courthouse. So understanding that local history and the cultural context is crucial. Spend some time looking at those historical maps. Spend some time diving into the local history so that you can get a complete picture of your ancestors' lives. Now, mistake number 9 is actually one that I am guilty of, particularly when I started out my research, and that is I was too general in my searches. When you use broad search terms in databases or search engines, you could end up overwhelmed with the number of irrelevant results that come back, making it very hard to find the result that you need among all the ones that have no bearing to your research at all. So for instance, searching for your ancestor's name without any additional details can lead to thousands and thousands of results. So instead of just using your ancestor's name, make sure you're adding some defining details about their lives if you know them. Perhaps it might just be a location of where they lived. Perhaps it might be just a date of birth, a date of death, but something that would potentially narrow down the time period that they lived. So instead, refine your searches with parameters such as a date of birth or a date of death, type of, specific if you know it, but if not, a more general location is helpful as well. And possibly any known variations of that name. Oftentimes in the genealogy databases, you can ask it to search on alternate variations as opposed to doing an exact search. And that way you can include those variations as well. And don't overlook the advanced search tools that might be available in your genealogy database of choice. So when you are a little more precise and not quite so broad in your searches, you're going to get better search results and more relevant search results. It's going to help you hone in on the records that are pertinent to your ancestors. All right, and so for this last mistake, this one is crucial, guys, and that is oftentimes I see people giving up too soon in their research. Genealogy research can take time and sometimes be a frustrating process. And so it can be easy to get discouraged if you don't find your immediate results. But persistence is the key to finding those troublesome ancestors. Sometimes finding that right result or that particular record that you need to finally break that genealogy brick wall really is just a matter of time and rechecking the databases. Don't be afraid to revisit old leads that you might have had. Try a different search strategy, explore new resources, and recheck those databases to check if new record collections have come out and might hold the records that you need. So be patient and persistent. Every little step forward in your genealogy research is still a step forward and gets you closer to uncovering more of your family history. Now learn about some common mistakes in the census records that you could be making in this video on your screen now. 5 mistakes you are making in your census research.